Today, we're diving into a really interesting, kind of counterintuitive idea, the architecture of disappearance. And no, it's not just about logging off. It's about the deep psychology behind why some people choose to just step away from all that constant digital noise. I mean, have you ever really had that feeling? The one where you just want to delete every single app, maybe change your number and just vanish? It's this deep pull so many of us feel to unplug from a world that seems to demand we're always on. But here's the twist. What if that urge isn't about weakness? What if it's not about escaping? Some psychologists actually suggest this desire to disappear might be the exact opposite. It could be a sign of some serious mental growth, a kind of evolution of yourself. Okay, so let's start with the urge itself. It's so important to understand that we're not talking about some impulsive, rebellious act here. This is way more calculated. It's a quiet, deliberate shift away from the chaos and towards something with a little more substance. Think about it. You've probably seen this happen. There's no big drama, no grand goodbye cruel world post. They just quietly fade from your feed. You know, in a world that practically gives out trophies for being seen, these people are playing a completely different game. They're not running away from the world. They're kind of waking up from it. And this leads us to a really cool psychological concept, a high privacy orientation. All that means is that you value controlling your own story. So while a lot of people are out there looking for validation from a screen, these folks, they rely on self-validation. They just don't need to broadcast their life to feel like it's a good one. That right there is a quiet but super powerful sign of some deep inner security. So what pushes a person to this point? Well, it often starts with something we can call the great digital burnout. You know, that moment when the whole digital game just isn't fun anymore and the rewards, they just stop feeling like rewards. And there's a scientific name for this. It's called hedonic adaptation. It's basically the reason why getting your 1,000th like feels absolutely nothing like getting your first one. Our brains are wired to get used to pleasure until, well, it just becomes background noise. The social media rewards just stop hitting the same. This quote just nails it, doesn't it? It captures that turning point perfectly. It's not that the world failed them or anything. It's that their own sense of who they are has just leveled up. Their self-worth has totally outgrown the need for external approval. It's not up for debate anymore. And they certainly don't need a digital crowd to tell them they matter. And you know, a big part of this is just pure mental economics. Our brains aren't these infinite hard drives, right? We have a very limited amount of cognitive bandwidth. And every single notification, every scroll, every like, it all costs a little piece of it. So when someone disappears, what they're really doing is making a conscious choice to reallocate that precious mental energy. They're cashing out their investment in all that digital noise, which has a pretty low return, and they're putting it into assets that actually grow over time. Things like deep focus, real creativity, and actual learning. It's a total strategic withdrawal. So, okay, what actually happens in that quiet space? This is where the real construction project begins. Because silence isn't empty. It's actually an incredibly productive place to be. Psychology actually has a term for this. It's called the incubation effect. Think about it. Our best, most creative ideas almost never happen when we're staring at a screen, right? They pop into our heads in the shower or on a long walk, in those quiet moments after we've disconnected. By vanishing from all that noise, you stop just consuming the world and you actually start shaping your own. And this all points to a trait called low social dependency. Now, that doesn't mean being antisocial, not at all. It's really about being self-sufficient. These are people who find comfort inside their own minds, and they'd much rather have a few deep quality connections than a huge number of superficial ones. For them, being alone isn't a failure to connect, it's a strategic choice. But look, none of this happens by magic. The architecture of disappearance, it's built on a really powerful internal framework, and it takes real intentional effort to build it. This whole thing requires a level of discipline that's honestly kind of scary. And you know why it's so rare? Because it's quiet. It's not the kind of discipline you post about to get applause. It's an active, daily practice of choosing what really matters over what's just loud. Just think about the two ways you can approach a goal. You can announce it to the world, right? That gives you a little dopamine hit, tricks your brain into feeling like you've already done something. Or you can execute in silence. That's what builds true momentum. You stop performing for an audience and you start just practicing for yourself. So where does all this lead? What's the end game? Well, it takes you to the final and maybe most profound stage of this whole architecture, a completely new kind of peace. And what's so critical to understand here is that this final state, it isn't about anger or bitterness. It's a kind of psychological detachment that's born from pure awareness. These people haven't left the party because they're mad at everyone. They've left because they can finally see the whole room clearly. This is the core realization. This is the big one. True contentment is an inside job. It doesn't need an audience. Peace doesn't have to be proven or performed. It just has to be felt. And in the end, the life they build in that quiet space, it speaks for itself. Their actions, their focus, their sense of peace. That silence becomes more powerful and tells a much louder story than any social media post ever could. So if you've ever felt that pull to disconnect, please don't dismiss it as a weakness. It might just be your mind telling you that it's ready for something more. It's a craving for depth in a world that, let's face it, too often celebrates the superficial. And that kind of leaves us with one final question to think about. If you feel that urge, don't just ask what you're running from. Instead, ask yourself, what amazing thing is my mind trying to build in the silence?